Thank you all so much for coming here. I flew in from Washington, D.C. To be here with you all. I first got involved with UC Ladino a little bit when you had a wonderful lecture about the Jews in Salonika. And I continued my curiosity on the topic, and here's my presentation. Okay, so... Okay, here we go. So the story starts in Spain, as most of us know, and the Sultan who invites the Jews who are expelled from the Spanish Inquisition, Bayazid II, says the Catholic monarch Ferdinand was wrongly considered as wise, since he impoverished Spain by the expulsion of the Jews and enriched Turkey. In this sentence, he means that the Jews and Muslims who were expelled from Spain in 1492 were invited by the Ottoman Empire into the territories of the Balkans, Anatolia, Middle East, North Africa. There, they were able to become court physicians. They introduced the first Hebrew printing press, only 1 year after they had been expelled from Spain in 1493. And they were successful Ottoman diplomats, leveraging their connections in Portugal, in Britain, and even Jewish women had a role in the Ottoman court. In the pictures, you can see the Sultan Bayazid, and also the ship with the Ottomans greeted the refugees from the Spanish Inquisition. Okay, so here's an early depiction of the Jews coming from different parts of the empire. Not only do we have Jews in Turkey from the Spanish and Portuguese times, but also from other areas as well. As you can see from these documents, here is a Jewish lady who has integrated and assimilated with the culture she arrived in, which looks to me as probably Morocco. And here, the Ottomans kept very good records. So here's a document from the Ottoman archives in 1519. And you can see that just a small group that was recorded in this document, from going to Edirne, you have Jews coming from Catalonia in Barcelona, in Spain. You have Jews coming from Portugal, from Germany, from Gerur, from Toledo, from Aragon, from different areas of Spain and from Europe. They all came and created a community together rather quickly. Each time they passed one generation to another, they passed on the key. So if you go to Cordoba, you can see the perfectly preserved houses of these Sephardic Jews. They left behind all of their belongings and passed the key from one generation to the next. And this is how their story continues, and through music and through song. When they came to Turkey, they integrated with the already established community of the Romagnol, who are ancient. Their temples can be traced back to 220 BC. And famously, the Romagnols were visited by Saint Paul of the Ephesians in the New Testament. And you can still go, if you go to Ephesus one day, beautiful city, you can see the temple there. So this is the initial way that they were able to have a community structure. Let's see. So, excuse me. And the Jews were traditionally dressed in black, the Muslims were dressed in green, they all had colors, and that system of dress survives to the language today, where green is synonymous with Muslim, and the colors have a second metaphor, a second meaning. So that's from Ottoman times. Some challenges they did face was in the first in the Tanzimat reforms, which caused the Ottomans to overtake the Jewish schools and the system that they had built up there in order to unify the empire against outside threats, colonialist designs for their empire. And, but that meant a loss of autonomy for the Jewish community and other communities in the Ottoman Empire. Here's a political cartoon from that time, very dramatic with the Bosphorus in the background. And the angel, you can see, is carrying in Ottoman Turkish and in French and in Greek, the languages of the Ottoman Empire. She says liberty, fraternity, and equality. So equality. From the French Revolution. So trying to appear more modern, more European, and unifying everyone under the label of Turkish, of Muslim, of Ottoman, which didn't fit, of course, many of their subjects. In this period, you have the Francos, who are from Italy, and the French with the Alliance Israélite Universelle, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, to establish schools, and they taught in French. And the interesting thing is, although they did help unify the Jewish community, teaching Hebrew, teaching French, and teaching Ottoman Turkish, which many people didn't speak so well at that moment because their communities were so inclusive, the legal system, the language, everything was one inclusive community. But Ladino, Judeo-Espanol, it goes by many names in Turkey, also Yahudice and many other names for the same language system, was considered a second-class language. It was looked down upon by all these organizations which had come in to the end times of the Ottoman Empire to help the Jewish community, but forgetting the language they had taken, preserved for 500 years. The French, quote, considered it not a language at all, but a deformed mixture of languages. The Turks would joke, citing sentences that were mainly using Turkish loanwords, such as El vapor yanaşıyor al köprü. So the boat approached the bridge. Almost all those words are Turkish. Or nosotros no nos cariciamos en los meseles del hükümet. We do not get involved with matters of the government. Very popular thing to say in Turkey. Okay, so you can see, and the Jews themselves would worry about teaching Ladino, Judeo-Espanol, to their children because they didn't want them to speak with an accent, to be discriminated against. So all these groups were wary for different reasons to pass on this language. However, there was one, Itzhak Yeshuva Efendi, who did push on many occasions the Ottomans and finally got history books printed, saying that this will keep the Jewish community from foreign influence, from revisionist principles, and they will help them as they are learning Ottoman Turkish still, as the system is changing from a very inclusive Milliyet community to something more Ottoman, maybe more nationalist, but certainly not the same Ottoman Empire the Jews had arrived in many years ago. And as I figure this out, the next chapter is the Republic in Turkey. Okay, there we go. So Atatürk is an Ottoman officer from Salonika, or Thessaloniki, however you like to call it. And in this city, which is called the one of the Jewish cities of Europe, Atatürk's movement arises. He is able to lead a successful revolution against many different European powers who want to divide Anatolia. and pit the different nationalities, ethnicities against each other. He unites them and creates one Turkish republic, and it's your feeling that makes you a Turk, not your ethnicity or your language, at least in ideology. It is like this. So, many of the prominent Kemalists who are supporting Atatürk are actually from different ethnicities, like Cohen, a Jew, a Sephardic Jew, is one of the most prominent nationalists in this movement. So he was able to bring many people together with this very open ideology, which was going against the trend of very nationalist movements in the Balkans or in Israel and many countries. So, the Jews, for this reason, accept the Treaty of Hussein, which dissolved the Millet system and gives them equal protections in theory. They but Judeo-Espanol is still suffering under this new regime because Judeo-Espanol is associated with religion, and this new regime is very laicite, very interested in secularism. So again, Judeo-Espanol is thought of something of the past. Also, during the Holocaust, many Jews start to come over. Atatürk's dentist, for example, I think his name was Sami Grunsberg. He was a Jewish dentist, and one of his doctors was also a Jew, and he later became a parliamentarian. And so these Jews were saved from the Holocaust. There's many documentaries on this. Where they were, some of the Turkish diplomats, there was an obituary in the LA Times, how I first found this story, for a Turkish diplomat in the Los Angeles Times, because he had personally saved some Jews who were on the cattle cars, taken them from cattle cars because they had lived in an Ottoman territory, which is very vast. You know, it could be Middle East, it could be Anatolia, it could be Palestine, Israel, what have you. So they were able to protect at least some of the community in this way, and I apologize for the presentation. Okay. Yes, and then but the next, not everything was so easy in the beginning. In 1934, although Turkey is technically neutral, the Borunda happened, which in Turkish we say Trakya olayları. Okay. The Trakya events, it means. Events is a nice word for saying definitely some chaos. What happened in this situation? So in 1934, the Nazi regime was putting pressure on Turkey, who was allied with Germany in World War I. Because of this, many things happened. One thing was that in 1934, the Ministry of the Interior planned to undercut what it perceived to be an upper hand of the Jews and the Greeks in Trakya, and over the Turks, the Muslims in the region, and to level the playing field on an economic, political, and social level. They sent an order in. This order went terribly wrong. Instead, what happened was that riots, looting, many people died. It was, in some people's accounts, a pogrom in Trakya. The Jews came at great shock because this had been unprecedented. They had never been treated in such a way. And they woke, and I spoke to people who had witnessed this in their childhood, of course, talking to me about, they remember walking through the streets of their village, near where they were, and the furniture was everywhere, everything was gone, it was over. But some people picked up and went on. Others were too shocked, too traumatized by this, and they left. Atatürk, so the story goes, did hear about what was going on with the looting and the burning and killing in Trakya, and he put an immediate stop to this. But by then, it was too late. The damage had been done, and many people left. So this is the first wave, I would say, of migration from Trakya, which has its counterpart, Trakya, also in Greece. Okay, and so, In La Borenda, what I was told is called in Judeo-Espanol, is something that the Jews use that means a storm. I did many interviews. I have like 5 minutes, so I probably won't get to make too much time. But I was lucky enough to interview Jews from Izmir and from Istanbul. Some of them are in my family, so that was nice. Well, anyway, and very close to my neighborhood. And one was in Izmir, which is here. As you can see, there are still a Jewish school in Izmir, and Jewish life is continuing. In the train stations now in Izmir, Jewish food like boyos, I think it's called, and almendra, like kurabiye, almendra cookie is being sold. So Jewish life continues. However, it was very rough when a Sephardic woman ran out to save her children on the other side of the city. She had to pass through the Armenian quarter because Sephardic Jews spoke Judeo-Espanol. The soldier mistook her for Armenian. She was running through the Armenian quarter. Armenians were being rounded up. Greeks were being chased away. And she had nothing to prove. She was in panic. It was wartime. What could she do to prove that her accent was really Jewish and not Armenian? So the soldier took pity on her, and they walked an hour and a half to her house so she could show the mezuzah. The mezuzah is what saved her. So the kindness of the soldier is what saved this family, and she ended up living a very nice old age. So, and her descendants went on to become very successful people, doing business, women and men both, I'm proud to say. Very visionary, this community, very open. So Turkey owes a lot to them. In Istanbul as well, you can see some of my family photos. There are Dönme and Jews. Of course, this is topic, that's another book probably, but there's my family. So, let's see. So you can see there's the man from Salonika, my great-grandfather, and my mom, who's in the office, who's in the audience, and his wife, who's Lebanese Turkish. Because again, in Istanbul, big cities, there are intermarriages, and this is the way it is. So you have Susan in the tall one in the middle. Her mother was a Sabra Jew from Poland, last name of Linsky, who married by, I think, Kismet probably, my great-grandfather, who was a diplomat sent to Jerusalem. Muslim, Ottoman, Turk diplomat, marries the nurse who he was encountered with when he was sick, I suppose, and they fall in love and get married. And so Mihriban is Lebanese Turkish, and her sister Susan, my great aunt, who I had the fortune of meeting, is Sabra Turkish, but grows up in Izmir as a Muslim. So everyone is mixed, and we have an open mind for this reason. So, and look at the faces. These are all one person. She comes from Ottoman Empire, covered dark. She marries the man from Salonika in the middle, and then she is elected as one of the first female council members in the Black Sea, as the city council woman, and these women are elected. I mean, in Turkey, the first Supreme Court justice in the world is in Turkey, is a woman, so, it's really great. And see, there she is casting her ballot. And there's my great-grandfather from Salonika and my mom. So, yeah, so I would definitely encourage you to get involved. Lend your memories to the digitization efforts. They're being done here in Los Angeles, in Turkey, many countries. Subscribe to the newspapers, they need your help. Write to your editor if you see hate speech. There are many good foundations I can connect you with that work on this issue. And remember the motto El Amanecer that says, Cuando mucho escurece es para amanecer. When it is the darkest, the day is about to dawn. Thank you very much. Kolay y liviano que estés.
question. The village you talked about, was it Turkey in Turkey?
Sorry, could you please repeat your question?
The village that you talked about, was it called Takia?
No,
in Turkey?
Trakya.
Trakya?
Oh, Trakya, trace.
Trace.
Trace in
It's a
English.
region, it's not a village. Which
No.
What city was it? Was it Edirne or another city?
Kırklareli.
Kırklareli, okay.
Okay, yeah, Trakya is a region and it's split in two. So it's trace in English. Yeah.
Traki.
Traki in Greece. Thank you very much. So there you go.
More questions?
There seems to be an interesting parallel between the other Jewish language, majority Jewish language of Yiddish, which was called and considered a jargon, and the description that you gave of Judeo-Spanish also being a sort of corrupted. Do you think that that was basically a way of looking down on Jews without having to say we're looking down on Jews by degrading their language? And a separate question, if you know, you said that the first Hebrew press was formed in the Ottoman Empire.
That was brought
Brought.
from Spain.
Yeah, but I mean, it was established very early.
Yeah.
Do you know if that was for printing religious books only, or sort of secular books like newspapers and poetry?
Two good questions. I did several interviews of Turkish Jews have lived in different communities. The experience of each community is very different. Some is very negative, some is very positive, but in the end they all end up coming, even if they leave, because of some trauma to Israel, to Cuba, to wherever, a lot of them end up coming back to Turkey because the quality of life is something different, I suppose. That's what they all say. So I think that even though, maybe the Ladino Judeo-Espanol was not considered a proper language and it went through some rough times, but now, if you look especially with the 500-year anniversary that's come in 1992 and all the work that's been happening since then, starting from very small seats, people meeting in cafes to talk Judeo-Espanol because they remembered it from their hometown. I mean, it's not a big money deal. That this is a movement that has spread through many means, through beautiful music, and some of them, they're not like me, not Sephardic themselves, but fall in love with it. So I think there's a lot of hope, maybe even if the numbers are getting less, through maybe non-traditional means, but I think it's there. So that's my guess for you.
Why don't you show the book?
Oh, and this is an example right here. These books here, please, I you can buy them self-published, but they're very good. Memoir plus cookbook. She's an architect in Maryland near where I work, so I'm just trying to help her out. And they're very, very good recipes. So. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to make just a couple of comments. First of all, you mentioned that Judeo-Spanish was associated with religion, and that's why it was not so much banned. There was a movement called Vatandaş Türkçe Konuş, which meant citizens speak Turkish. I think that the thrust was not anti-religious so much as nationalistic. In other words, Atatürk was involved in nation building. And during the empire, there were many different nationalities in the empire, and all of them had their own language, and that's how empires are. They comprise vast areas, and they rule over people of different ethnicities who speak different languages. But if you're trying to build a nation state, you sort of have to have a focus, you have to have a language, and that is the emphasis. And that's why it wasn't so much that the language was banned as that everybody was encouraged to learn and speak Turkish. And I'd like to remind everybody that having been in the Ottoman Empire for 500 plus years, there were still people at the beginning of the Republic who could speak only Judeo-Spanish. And my maternal grandmother was one of them. She knew a little Greek, but she didn't know any Turkish, and I can tell you, you know, sort of vignettes about that. The other thing was that I'd like to comment on what this gentleman said about Yiddish being a parallel and having been looked at as a second-class language or not a language at all. In fact, I think that's a common perception for any minority language. If you look a few years back, you will perceive and you'll read that Black English was classified as such, whereas it was not a dialect, it was not a language, but people would say about it, as they did about Judeo-Spanish and Yiddish, it's not a language, it doesn't have a grammar. Now, that sort of boggles the mind, because if you don't have a grammar, it would be impossible for two people to understand each other, since they would use any form that they wanted to. But I think that that was a common perception. With Westernization and with the Alliance Universelle Israélite, people were urged to use French, which was then the lingua franca, which it no longer is, although we won't tell the French. They began to feel themselves that they should speak in French, yes, and that they should put aside their old ways. Thank you.
Would you like to make any final comments?
Does anyone have any final questions before I make a final comment? Okay.
would like to.
All right. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for this lovely opportunity. It's really helped me to understand a part of my history that is always a little murky. So I am very excited that UCLA and UC Latino has given me this lovely opportunity to meet wonderful Sephardic, Dönme, Turkish people in Washington, D.C., in Los Angeles, in Turkey, and I hope many more countries to come. So thank you so much for introducing me to your lovely culture and language and food. And I look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations and workshops today and tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know.